This mini session will have 5 very different themes. Actually, my name is Kari Raagma. I'm from the University of Tartu Geography Department, which is also ECP institution in Estonia. I have great pleasure to chair this session here. And we have 5 pretty different, where is one? Pretty different topics to discuss in this mini session. Yep, excellent. And presenters will have only 4 minutes. This is close to this 3-minute pitch, so it's very short. And after that, I try to integrate a little bit, and maybe you have questions if you really have to clarify something. So maybe we can arrange a microphone here. And then I will try to keep audience awakened and involved. So I will ask after every presentation whether you're interested, or your colleagues or your institutions, to follow this topic and this research in the future. So we'll have some feedback also, how many fans you have in this audience. And as we have very limited time, so let's start. Tobias, please. That's a good question. So probably you just need to use arrows, yeah?
Oops. So good morning from my side. Thank you, Gary. I have 3 minutes to introduce one of the new targeted analyses on the Alpine region. And, well, what are we doing there? The official answer is written here. Our objective is to develop a territorial vision and common spatial perspectives, in the plural, for the Alpine area. And we have to have a focus on sustainability and on the strengthening of territorial cooperation. And even more, the objective is to develop an instrumental toolbox how to work on perspectives, on visions for regions also beyond the Alpine region. Some days ago, we met in Berlin for the formal kickoff with our lead stakeholder in Berlin, the ministry from Romana, Katharina Erdmenger. And in that ministry, you find what you see here on the screen. It's a 3D model from the Alpine region. It's a nice tool. You can project different maps on this physical 3D thing. And during our formal kickoff, we discussed really about this 3D model, and really the lead stakeholder formulated as one of the key demands that we have to reflect on the Alps as one geographical space without borders. I think all of you know that the morphological region of the Alps is really has 7 nation states. It has a lot of national borders. It is very fragmented in an institutional sense, but on that map you don't see them. And it's really it's an objective to reflect in that sense. We are aiming to overcome political and institutional borders, and in doing that, we want to better link the Alpine Convention and the macro-regional strategy and the Alpine Space Program. That sounds a bit technical, but it's a real important issue, because you have the Alpine Convention as focusing really on the geomorphological Alps, so really the inner part of where you have actually the mountains, and then you have the macro-regional strategy that is going far beyond, in particular in Germany and in France, also in Italy, where you have really some metropolitan areas and really down in the valleys that are participating here. And so this is one of the key challenges to bring these 2 different spatial perspectives together, both in analytical and in political ways. Yes, the question that I was asked to answer to is how can we involve the stakeholders actively? And of course, we have steering committee meetings. That's clear. And then we have, I think it will be in May, we will have quite a large stakeholder conference with representatives from all the involved regions and countries. One of the key empirical elements will be a Delphi study with representatives and experts from all the regions involved there. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to. We will produce mental maps from the Alps as they are now, and how the experts think that they should develop in future. And I'm really looking forward to the political process. We are in contact with all the institutions, and it's an interesting time because Austria will not only be having the presidency of the EU, but also will play a major role for the Alpine Convention and for the macro region. And we have already discussed very concretely how we can contribute to the political process here when contributing to the macro regional executive board, when contributing to the permanent committee of the Alpine Conference, and of course commenting on the future of the Interreg Alpine Space Program and some others. So this is again the picture that you see. It's the 3D model in Berlin, and there you see some stakeholders just discussing the Alps, how they can develop, and I think that will be quite a strong point about the project. I'm happy not to be alone, of course, from Erlangen-Nürnberg, but we have an interesting consortium on the research side for example, from Switzerland. We have University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. We have Bolzano, the European Academy in Italy, and we have Thomas Dax from Vienna. And I think have I forgotten somebody? I hope not. So I think I'm optimistic that we can make it. Well, what challenges? Of course, I could complain about resources, but I don't do so. But the political and institutional complexity in this region, that's really demanding. You all know it's one of the richest cooperation areas with a very complex setting there, and that's a challenge, but a challenge that I like. So I think that's within 4 minutes. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Please, any questions? Short questions? No? I'm just wondering, I was last summer in Aosta, and this region seems really prosperous. Prices are incredible. So why you need this? Well, is something happening in Snowbelt? It seems.
Well, I wouldn't say cooperation is not only needed when you have socioeconomic problems, but I think every region needs cooperation, and I really would underline it's not a luxury. You really need it everywhere, and I think the more borders you have, the more cooperation you need, and the Alpine region is really rich of borders too. And then I would say, okay, you're right that the Alpine region is comparably rich, but we have, of course, disparities there too. We have east-west, we have north-south, and of course we have the higher parts and the lower parts, and it's not all rich on the same level, I would say.
So, who would be interested about this topic? Please raise your hands. Yeah, maybe, 15%, 20%. Thank you. Please. So, next, Stefano. Okay. 4 minutes.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to present this program. Yes. Yeah. Well, I have to say that just we have spoken about the most prosperous region. Yeah. Well, here is the worst region. We are moving to the most problematic area of Europe, particularly because we include also lots of countries that are candidate countries that maybe they will include it into the European Union in a foreseeable future, maybe not. So this is exactly the point that we are focusing on the region. I hope now. This, yeah. Okay. No, this was the other one. Oh, I don't know. Okay. Anyhow, it's okay. These are the questions that were raised. I wanted to show you the outcomes, the main outcomes, but
maybe
apparently
they took some slides off.
I don't know. Is the other? I don't know.
Blank.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. The main focus is connected to two macro regions, the Adriatic Ionian and the Danube macro region. And our task is to not only to identify and mapping typologies about the refugees and migration flows, the plural, but also to identify and disseminate some best practices regarding social economic inclusion in that might be useful for our stakeholders in order to develop a strategy about territorial cohesion in this region, with some recommendations that are expected at the end of this research. When I was speaking about flows, I was speaking particularly about the fact that we have identified already three main flows of migrants and refugees. Actually, during the development of our collection of data, we have discovered that most probably we have to speak about 4 floors instead of 3. The 3 main floors, briefly, I can mention are the following. The first one is connected to the mobility within the states of the region. So this means particularly connected to the urbanization, the abandoning of the rural areas, the population. But this process is not only taking place within one state, but within the region, the macro region in itself, because we have a mobility of people, for instance, let's say from Bosnia-Herzegovina moving to Serbia, or from Bosnia to Croatia, from Albania to other areas like Kosovo or in the north, or vice versa. So there is a mobility within the region that is additional to the external mobility, is the third one. This is the international mobility of the transit that was summarized by the Balkan route, but within which the local people also took advantage for their own mobility activities, to such an extent that, for instance, 130,000 Albanians, for instance, participated into the flow of the Balkan routes in order to join Austria and Germany. They were all rejected, but in any case, then they came back, and this is exactly the four flows that I wanted to mention, because within the case studies that we wanted to develop, there is also one that is connected exactly on the situation in Friuli, Venezia Giulia, and Slovenia, where we have to consider the role of the people coming back, but they want to cross the Schengen area, and we are on the border of the Schengen. So this is the reason. And one thing that we would like to address also is about the territorial cohesion, and I'm closing, is the fact that there is an interest to see whether we can exploit positively the skills of the migrants for some specific area, protection of environmental areas. I mean particularly in the area of hydrogeological instabilities, because we have an experience in Calabria and in Emilia-Romagna that might be useful for this.
Thank you. Short question. Who are your stakeholders? Who are the most interested stakeholders?
Yeah, stakeholders, they have the regional authorities from the Adriatic and Ionian Initiative, from the Danube, from Spain, from Greece, from the Balkans. And the partnership we have are from Albania, the European University, from the University of Thessaly in Greece. And okay.
Yeah. Applause now, yeah. Interested bodies, please raise your hand. No one is interested about, okay, something's coming. Please come out from from those tablets, yeah. Okay, some maybe 10-15%. Thank you. Another very Italian, right?
Yes, so it's...
You're very active.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcoming the Link Pass project. It's a project devoted to discover if the present, the existing network of protected areas are able to support these new challenges in Europe, mostly for the post-2020. And more the future that we have in front of us on the basis of climate change mitigation, green economy, and so on. And so it's, I don't know.
Oops.
Me? Ah, okay. Perfect, sorry. I am a bit technological in second generation. Link Pass, this is the flow of our work. It's included a lot of academic people and research institute that work in these areas, and mainly in the mountain area, but not exclusively. We need to identify this area as on the basis of their characteristics, but only for their diversity, geographical diversity, but on the basis of the impact that NPIs produce on the policy sectors, and including on the basis of stakeholders' demand, the question of what small and medium firms works and produce employment and grow in these areas, and how it's possible to include better and better them for the development, sustainable development, looking at climate change mitigation and green economy by eco-services, infrastructure, green infrastructure, and cultural services. The demand by the stakeholder that cover different levels from local in Bulgarian and international level is a very complex but clear. And in addition, there is also the GCT demand, and it's would like that we study not only indicator, not only all the characteristics of the area, but also the new territorial governance models in supporting these economic and development in that areas. And more, how it's possible to integrate public and private investment by the NPIs and to produce a good adaptation to the challenges. And we are covering and collecting data information indicator on the basis of existing model, and using not only the research activity but also the practical experience, our practical experience in these areas, and looking at organization, active participation in the managing active preservation, using also parallel instrument as a SWOT analysis to look at the concept and the appropriate interpretation of the main policy as biodiversity or climate change or protection policies, and involving stakeholders in the areas, poor stakeholders that pressing to them, focusing on this investment possibility of investment by semi-structured interview that they are covering for us. And of course, we are at the first part of the result. We have no one-size-fits-all solution, but a common methodological approach. And we discover that small and medium firms in these areas are not only traditional firms, but also very, very innovative. And we compare the three levels of stakeholder participation. Many thanks.
Thank you. Applause. Yeah, it's very short, I know. But I have a question, because in this country, when environmental protection people, they want to restrict something or not to allow to build something. So they set up new nature protection area. The last case was with the Rail Baltic, which is going to cost us some 70-80 million more extra. Yeah. So is your nature protection people a bit more business friendly? Because one of your targets is to support local business development.
Yes, there is a lot of participation in this area, and we are comparing also the spatial planning models that permit people to discuss citizenship, not only in the area, but also in the boundaries areas, to have more participation, because in this area there is a low density system, but they are very, very attractive, and this area produce innovative models. For example, they are using a digital transition under the new connection in some cases.
But are your environmental protection people more positive towards business development? Okay, thank you. How lucky you.
Thank you, Gary, and hello, everybody. Let me start with a question. What are cross-border public services? I don't want to raise your hands. I think you did a lot of voting already during the day and yesterday. So it seems to be a rather straightforward question at first glance, but trust me, already during the first 3 weeks of our research, we noticed there are many uncertainties persisting. What is a cross-border public service? So this explains already why we will deal with CPS. There is a research need because a lack of a precise understanding of the term, which in turn leads to a lack of consistent data and a European overview. And on top of that, border areas have definitely special service needs. So put yourself in the shoes of a stakeholder in a border region. What could be their demand, their objective? They are, of course, interested in improving their position due to their location, whether they are disadvantaged or not. Not every border region is disadvantaged. Because of their special service needs, CPS are one approach to improving their position, to tackle these special needs they have. And our task as a targeted analysis is to support them in further developing their CPS. What does this require? It requires that we get reliable data on operating CPS, to give them good examples, to show what really is CPS, what's not, and so on, and to obtain a sufficient in-depth understanding in order to support the very first steps of CPS development, because our project runs only for a year, and everybody of you may know a cross-border public service is not developed within 1 year, so we can only kickstart something. So what does this require? The support must be based on a very intensive dialogue with our stakeholders in order to get there. And rather than going through the whole list of interactive involvement of our stakeholders you can see on the slide, I would like to focus on what are these actions for. Firstly, we want to take into account the individual starting points, because not every of our stakeholder regions has the same level of experience in providing CPS. Some are rather experienced, others are much less experienced. We have to take into account the very different regional needs due to their territorial features, starting with physical features, demographic characteristics, infrastructure development, or economic characteristics. And finally, their involvement is important to take into account the different framing conditions, both when it comes to regional traditions, how to provide services based on their legal and administrative backgrounds, as well as framing conditions with regard to different sectors, because CPS can be provided in many different sectors. And this all needs to be incorporated for developing the recommendations towards the first steps. Thank you very much.
Excellent timing. Questions from auditorium? No, then I would ask. Not even ask, but we know what you're talking about. We have Ivangorod, Narva in the eastern border. We have Valga in southern border. And as I understood, we have had also some studies in those localities. And one of the biggest problems is how to convince national governments to allow something to do cross-border. So will you also
the
deal with that?
National
governments, yeah?
We do not have national governments as stakeholders.
Yeah,
we have the regions
but
in there. You do not need the national governments for each and every CPS. So it depends. For some, you need state agreements, interstate agreements, sure, but not for all and everything.
But you will approach them.
Sorry?
You will approach national governments as well.
We will see what is necessary.
I would recommend
Well, we will see. First of all, we are now conducting a stock taking of what are the interests of our stakeholders. So what are they really going for, and what is backed by their political documents? What can be really achieved? And we will try to focus
we can talk
on
later.
what
on that. I have some experience with that.
Realistic.
Yep. Any fans of cross-border public services? I'm. Okay, please. And yeah.
Right. Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. Yeah. E-health is gaining significant importance, and its initiatives are becoming a crucial building block for making health sector much more efficient. As a result, this study aims to examine and provide evidence about the development of e-health solutions in the changing landscape of technology, territorial governance, and cross-border cooperation. The study will address the different stakeholder knowledge needs to better understand, firstly, the implementation of digital health solutions. It requires really a close examination of the challenges the city, region, or country is confronted with in terms of policy, practices, or legal framework. Another aspect is related to data-driven healthcare and its peculiarities. The growing importance of digital health brings not only opportunities, but also challenges how to handle sensitive data or transferability of health data among the countries. For example, in Estonia and Finland, the increasing cross-border movement of patients creates necessity to analyze in depth the opportunities and challenges for cross-border movement of health data. Also, it's important to relate to digitization in sectors beyond e-health, such as education or urban planning, and to really examine the transferability of good practices, which can be, well, transferred to health sector too. Finally, there's a need to understand of how digital solutions impact the quality of healthcare. As concerns the study, we have planned a participatory approach throughout the study. Therefore, cooperation with stakeholders, steering committee, and other relevant organizations such as university, ICT experts, healthcare providers are crucial to ensure the involvement, information sharing, and also the use of end result. And just to mention that the project is really fresh. We're just about to have our kickoff meeting next week. But the main outcome of the study will be comparative analysis of digital solutions and roadmap of good practices for designing future digital and data-driven health solutions, followed by policy recommendations for maximizing the potential of e-health solutions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Time for questions? No. You will have next week kickoff meeting, right?
Yes, correct.
Will be there also health organizations like Sick Fund, some hospitals joining you?
Well, we expect to have some observers joining the board.
That's important.
Yes, just to have a full conversation going on.
Well,
Voting?
can be done. It's probably impossible to make some conclusions on the basis of that. So I will just, fans of digital health, please raise your hands who would like to follow this topic in the future. Agenting, you know, you will have a lot of fans in the future, okay. Well, anything? No. No. Then thank you for your attention, and we probably saved a few minutes. I hope so. Thank you.